I just heard that from a psychic that the first crack, when the big one hits, will be right here in the center of this. Philippines is so corrupt, it's so lousy, that if you kill all congressmen, senators, and the president, we will have a new day. So I pray that if the earthquake comes, it comes now, this moment. Kompleto na tayo.
Juror ka, juror siya, juror ako, juror tayo. Palakasan na hindi uso sa bayan ko. What is happening to our country, General?
Honestly, I have identified the enemy who dumped us into this quagmire we are in. I have met the enemy face to face, and sadly, the enemy is us. We are our own tormentors, addressing the Filipino people. We are our own demons. We are as rapacious predators preying on the helpless, the weak, and the voiceless. We find corruption everywhere in government, when every malefactor watching his cohorts back in blatant disregard of his oath when he assumed public office.
The powerlessness of the people is the ultimate desecration of democracy. There is the immoral gap between the rich and the poor.
Ang mga salot na mga kurakot powered by hukumang trial by palakasan ang ugat ng lahat nating mga kanser o lahat ng mga kanser sa ating lipunan.
When I decided to seek the presidency of this republic, I knew what the ills of our country were. I knew their causes, and I was briefed on those who caused the causes. I heard the people on the streets complain that justice had become illusory, that equity and fairness and speedy disposition of cases had deteriorated into hollow concepts fit only for muscular dissertations. It was and still is very sad indeed. As a former prosecutor, I know there are always ways of knowing how fast or how slow cases go. What I did was to look into the number of postponements and the time difference between each postponement and the next setting. It was simple as that.
Ang mga salot na mga kurakot powered by hukumang trial by palakasan ang ugat ng lahat nating mga kanser o lahat ng mga kanser sa ating lipunan. Hindi po sila napapanagot sapagkat kontrolado po nila ang mga hukuman. No? Dahil sa salot ng mga kurakot, sandamukal, sandamakmak ang mga naghihirap. Dahil sa kahirapan, marami ang nagre-rebelde. Marami ang obligadong maging OFW. Talamak ang kriminalidad. Mga bata pa lang natututo na, obligado na mandukot, mang-isnats, at kung babae naman, bata pa lang, pokpok na. Dahil sa kahirapan. So ano ang bukod tanging solusyon?
Our relationship is special because of the values and beliefs that have united our people through the ages. Centuries ago, when kings, emperors, and warlords reigned over much of the world, it was the English who first spelled out the rights and liberties of man in the Magna Carta. It was here, in this very hall, where the rule of law first developed, courts were established, disputes were settled, and citizens came to petition their leaders. Over time, the people of this nation waged a long and sometimes bloody struggle to expand and secure their freedom from the crown. And propelled by the ideals of the Enlightenment, they would ultimately forge an English Bill of Rights and invest the power to govern in an elected parliament that's gathered here today. What began on this island would inspire millions throughout the continent of Europe and across the world. But perhaps no one drew greater inspiration from these notions of freedom than your rabble-rousing colonists on the other side of the Atlantic. As Winston Churchill said, the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, habeas corpus, trial by jury, and English common law find their most famous expression in the American Declaration of Independence.
When our Constitution was formed in the 1700s, there was no clear understanding of what the framers were going to come up with when they started writing our Constitution, with one exception. They were absolutely clear in their minds that we wanted to provide for trial by jury. That was a given.
The framers of our Constitution felt so strongly about trial by jury that they put it in the Constitution. They put it in the Bill of Rights. It applies to criminal trials, to all criminal trials. It applies to many civil trials. They regarded it as one of the most important safeguards of democracy. I think to their minds it was as important as the right to vote. Jurors really are experts, more than we judges are, on the thing that we ask juries to do, and that is to make findings of fact.
So ano ang bukod tanging solusyon? Sapagkat ang ugat ay korupsyon ng at ang mga salarin ay powered by hukuman, trial by palakasan. So, pag ginamitan natin yung sentido komon, dapat palitan ang sistema ng hustisya. Ano ang ating pamalit? Yung trial by jury of the people, by the people na siyang pundasyon, puso at esensya ng demokrasya.
Here's medieval England. And in medieval England, society was organized under the feudal system. At the bottom were the peasants. They farmed land that they had rented from the barons.
No money.
The barons were wealthy because they'd done a favor for the king, who'd given them land as a reward. At the top was the king. He owned everything in the kingdom and could do as he pleased, including making people pay tax.
I hate that. It's so unfair.
A king's power was based on the belief, supported by the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury, that God himself had made the king the king.
How splendid is that?
Sire, you've had ample time to review the Charter.
I have.
And you will keep your word and affix the royal seal?
And if I do not?
Tomorrow, England will be without a king.
Signing will no doubt kill me as well as your blade, sir. But I'll do it.
Which wasn't really going all that well anyway. They demanded that the king sign a document that limited royal power and set in place 3 cornerstones of liberty: the rule of law, representative government, and trial by jury. That document became known as Magna Carta, which is Latin for Great Charter.
This Magna Carta was entered into the statute rolls as English law, which meant that if a king wanted to change it, he had to get it approved by Parliament.
What's the big deal about Magna Carta anyway?
Well, in England, Magna Carta was the first step towards building a fair society where everyone has equal rights and nobody is more powerful than the law. This is the root of our legal system and government. Magna Carta and the English legal system became a model for other countries, including the USA.
Thank you, Magna Carta.
Australia.
Thanks a lot, Magna Carta.
New Zealand.
Cheers, Magna Carta.
Magna Carta has inspired the idea that all humans everywhere deserve equal rights and freedom.
May agam-agam si Alan. Si Alan nga akon kasimanwa dira bala sa Bacolod City. Sila niya, paano kung hindi pasakaan kaso ang mga kurakot kung malakas sila sa gobyerno? Ibig niya po sabihin, paano yan? Kung yung mga kurakot ay hindi sasampahan ng kaso. Sa jury justice system, hindi problema yan. Ito, pakinggan natin isang federal judge sa United States of America.
In our republic, there is a governmental entity established in both the United States and the state of Georgia Constitution called a grand jury. They stand between the government and the people. The neat thing about it is everybody answers to that body. Everybody.
What is the significance of the grand jury and petitioning to the grand jury? How are these people chosen?
Well, here in the federal circuits, they're chosen from what's called a wheel. It's basically it's just a computerized random selection of people's names. Those names then are transferred over to a form. Summonses are sent out. These people show up to be questioned, and from those questions, they may get their numbers down a little bit, and then from that bunch, by number, they're called and selected to serve, and then later, after all of them are selected, then they're all sworn as a group.
So are these just everyday American citizens? Do they have to take any type of time in law school?
No, that's the beautiful part of it is that these people are not selected because they have LLDs or PhDs after their name. They come here with nothing, sometimes nothing more than common sense. But that's the beauty of it. It's their common sense, their understanding of the weight, relevancy, and sufficiency of whatever fact or law is put in front of them.
Okay, so what is the authority that they have? So with you guys doing this petition, what authority do they have, and what is the goal?
Well, the goal is to protect you and me. And they sit at the pinnacle of that power. Oh, but now their authority to get that, you've got to go back into the common law. Because in the federal Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, and in Georgia's Constitution, the grand jury was picked up by the people, fully clothed with all of its power, all of its responsibilities and duties known to the common law, and sat down in our constitutional documents. Article 5 in the case of the federal grand jury, and Article 1.
And you can continue with the...
Okay, at 75, I think I just forgot where I was.
It's okay. So we were talking about the authority of the grand jury, and I was kind of thinking about if they in fact do take up this petition and they find evidence, what can they do with that?
Oh, okay. Not only is a grand jury clothed with extensive power in reaching a discretionary decision on a matter, but they have a great deal of discretion about how they handle the fallout from that evidence that they see. Now, they can issue a presentment, they can issue a special presentment, they can issue an indictment, and this happened down in Liberty County, Georgia, back in 1953. That grand jury down there heard from a citizens committee about their sheriff, and although what they heard indicated, okay, the sheriff has committed some criminal acts here, but unfortunately you got to stop and think, well, you know, if we indict the sheriff, then he goes to trial, he gets convicted, then he's going to be sent to a penitentiary, and heaven help him, that's a life sentence in 30 days. That's a death sentence in 30 days. So they didn't do that. What they did is they turned around and ordered the governor to remove him from office.
So they have that type of authority.
And they have that kind of authority. Yes, ma'am, they do.
How likely do you think it is that they will take this up and move forward with this?
If they are not lied to by government agents, which has happened in the past, that's personal knowledge to me, that a United States attorney lies to a grand jury foreman and tells him, oh, this guy don't need to be bothering y'all. He needs to take his little complaint over to the FBI. Okay? Well, now, that was the intimidation of a federal grand jury, and that happened back in 2013. So, I don't want to see that happen again. Now, under a grand jury's oath, they have no discretion in whether to hear a petition. They've got to hear. Now, what they do with what they hear, that's entirely their business.
Now, inshallah, pagka siguro yung BTE mapurma na yun, I'm sure malaking bagay ang may tutulong ng BTE para sa mga kapatid natin sa ano. Thousands sa pantaw, hundreds of thousands hindi pa nakakabalik ang gayon. Naghihirap pa sa evacuation center. Kaya kailangan ng tulong siya. We hope BTE can help them in the future, inshallah.
Ito naman ang nag-parting shot bago yung siguro yun, no ha? Hinahan ko na muna, baka makalimutan ko. Alam mo, may moments na rin ako. Anyway, I agree. Lahat siguro tayo naniniwala naman na tayo ay yung mga Pilipino. Ang pinakamayamang tao, mga tao sa buong mundo, kung hindi man isa sa pinakamayaman, ay ang pinakamayaman. Sa natural resources natin, nag-uumapaw. Hindi pa natin ginagalaw yung Benham Rice, hindi pa natin ginagalaw yung sa West Philippine Sea, may gumagalaw na doon para sa atin. Ito ang sangkusing kaisipan na gusto ko iwanan sa inyo mga Commissioner, Chairman. Kung maaari lamang, isali ninyo sa provision ng BDL doon sa Bill of Rights ang karapatan ng mga Pilipino sa trial by jury.
Corruption case would have never even gone to trial if it hadn't been for a group of citizens, the grand jury who indicted him. 7 Action News investigator Heather Cataldo takes us inside a system that's cloaked in secrecy but has changed the shape of Detroit's political landscape.
23 people, regular people like you and me, serving on a grand jury. They come together in secret inside this room, and their decisions can shape a life, a city, or even a nation.
Before a verdict, Kwame Kilpatrick guilty on 24 different charges, including racketeering conspiracy.
Before a trial, did Mr. Cato give you cash? The massive corruption case against Kwame Kilpatrick started behind these closed doors. A federal grand jury spent 2.5 years sitting in these chairs, listening to hundreds of witnesses and examining mountains of evidence. The grand jury system is completely secret, and it's a vital step in a federal criminal case. Instead of a prosecutor filing charges against someone like in state court, here inside this building, the federal district court, a panel of 23 citizens makes that crucial first decision on whether to charge someone with a felony.
You have someone's life in your hands. And you had better make sure.
Jill recently served on a grand jury in Detroit. Because of grand jury secrecy laws, she can't tell us which cases she heard. Jill says when she got that summons in the mail, she had no idea that she was about to play such a key role in democracy.
My first thing was, how do I get out of this? I don't want to commit myself to something else. But I am so glad I was chosen to do it.
Unlike a trial jury, which usually reports for duty every day, grand jurors typically meet once a week for 18 months.
The prosecutors are over here, and the witness is over here.
U.S. District Court Chief Judge Gerald Rosen took us inside a grand jury room where so many of Detroit's high-profile cases started.
You'll notice there's no table for defense counsel because defense counsel are not permitted in the grand jury room. It's strictly a proceeding in which the government presents evidence to the citizenry.
Pag ginamitan natin yung sentido común, dapat palitan ang sistema ng hustisya. Ano ang ating pamalit? Yung trial by jury of the people, by the people na siyang pundasyon, puso at esensya ng demokrasya.
I just heard that from a psychic that the first crack when the big one hits will be right here in the center of this. Philippines is so corrupt, it's so lousy, that if you kill all congressmen, senators, and the president, we will have a new day. So I pray that if the earthquake comes, it comes now, this moment. Kompleto na tayo.
Juror ka, juror siya, juror ako, juror tayo. Palakasan na hindi uso sa bayan ko.